This episode of Inside Golf Podcast is brought to you by Inside Sports Network.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Boston Capital Toodle Steve on the Hold the Green podcast.
All right, we are live. Tap in, birdie.
All right, Carson Young is here.
I bet Ludwig at 28.
Let's go. I bet
You
him
did too?
I bet him at 25.
Low sevens. I think there's some guys in here we like.
Harris English at 7,300.
I love Brian Harmon at 3.5% this week.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Hold the Green podcast. I am Steve Shirmer, riding solo tonight. Boston Capper unfortunately cannot make it tonight. He is traveling up to his location where he's going to be working this week tonight. So it's just me. Thanks for joining us tonight. You're coming off of a pretty great recap show with Andy, Kyle, and BK right before this. So this show is not going to really cover a lot of Open Championship, unpacking a lot of thoughts and hot takes. Besides, I couldn't do that anyways. Let my co-host do it anyway. So we're going to save a lot of those takes to Tuesday. I'm sure we're going to fight. I'm sure we're going to disagree on things. I'm sure that Boston Capper is going to offend the entire Scotty Scheffler family. It'll be a good show. But tonight, we're just going to focus solely on 3M Open. What a wonderful tournament at a wonderful golf course coming off a great major championship. But, we will break it down tonight. I have the PowerPoint fired up. I will show you the golf course. We'll go over major stats. We will go over past leaderboards, interesting anecdotes of what I've learned from this tournament and watched from this tournament the last 5 or 6 years. And then we'll look at the odds board. We'll start with, just a little first look. I have actually yet to see any of the odds. I'm sure I'm probably going to puke at some of the names that are right at the top of the board. But hey, it is weeks like this. I love betting on golf. Just bet on some bums who are way overpriced at 50, 60 to 1 with a hope and a dream, and seeing it all flame out with a couple of water balls on Thursday. So again, thanks for joining us. Also, thank you too if you took advantage of the free trial to become an insider for 1 week at ISN for Open Championship Week. I hope you enjoyed your experience. I hope you also got to see a little bit of what we're all about at ISN, whether it be our just great Discord with our great fans, the great banter that we were having at crazy hours in the morning. One of the highlights of my week was 8 psychopaths and myself at about, I'd say maybe 4 a.m. just cackling with glee when Minwoo Lee hit a skull off the first tee about 150 yards. That was great. Also throwing out some live bets and DFS strategies. You got to see me tilt the pretty dumb weather reports, I would say, over the week. The inconsistent ones. Unfortunately, a little bit of a missed opportunity with some round scores that I had. But you know what? We cashed 3 of them, 3-1 on the week for the round scores. I made a pretty good bet that got thrown out for the winning score after Thursday at under 273.5. That was completely easy money. Thank you, Scotty Scheffler. And that's what we do every single week on the disc at ISN. It's not just Andy's articles that are great and Ball Knowers After Dark, but, I'm throwing out live bets. I'm posting weather models. And I hope you enjoyed what you saw. And I hope you stick around for the rest of the year, because we're going to keep rolling through the FedEx Cup playoffs. We're going to keep rolling through the fall swing. Obviously, we're going to be doing some NFL talk. I know if you were a fan of ours at SGPN, we usually did an NFL show. Listen, we're not sharps, but if you like listening to Boston Capper and I banter every single week, hearing him complain about the Patriots and me complain about the Giants, well, we're going to probably continue doing that during the season. We're going to continue doing that as well. Make sure you stick around. But one thing we wanted to clarify going forward is that this show going forward is going to be free. We're not going to put it behind the paywall. So you will continue to enjoy us without having to pay anything. But we hope you enjoyed your experience at ISN, and I hope you continue down the road. So with that, though, let's save the Open Championship talk to Tuesday when Boston Capper returns, and let's focus solely on the 3M Open. So let's go to it right here. Here is, this is not TPC Twin Cities. This is another look at Royal Portrush. This is the 16th hole, nicknamed Calamity Corner, or maybe as some of you might have nicknamed it, Tranquility Corner, because of the low scoring that happened this week at Royal Port Rush. Did not live up to standards. It was too easy, not a true open venue. And look, I understand that there are people that do not like opens with, or just majors, a lot of birdies. I get it. Sometimes you just can't really control what the weather does. But just feast your eyes on this beautiful landscape right now with the sand dunes, the setting sun in the background there overlooking the ocean, because we are going from that to this golf course, this wonderful, bold, revolutionary golf course known as TPC Twin Cities. This is the 9th hole, actually, which we'll talk about in a little bit. This is actually one of the few holes I actually kind of like on this golf course. Now, before I kind of get into all of this, look, I've been doing this for a while, and there was a past life where I felt the need to impress my opinions on golf courses, whether they're good or not. And kind of what I learned over time is most people don't really care, to be honest. They just really want to know about the golf course, how to bet it, and interesting angles with it. And I try and tiptoe the line a little between if I like it, if not, these are good holes, these are bad holes, but overall try and keep opinion out of it. I can't really hide my opinion of this golf course or golf courses like this. And I'm sorry if you're a TPC Twin Cities member. It is a very well-maintained golf course. I'm sure you're proud of it. It's in immaculate condition. I admire all the what the superintendents do and the golf course managers, just make it in tip-top shape every single week. He obviously had a lot of weather issues coming into this tournament as well. I'm sure he worked really hard. It's great. This golf course is just not my cup of tea for a lot of reasons that we'll get to. But we are going to first start with this golf course. Back in 1991, we're going to go way, way, way back. And this is actually what TPC Twin Cities was like roughly 30 years ago or so. You heard the joke that people call it TPC sod farm. Well, it's because it actually was a sod farm. This is actually the sod farm that you're looking at right now. Not a single piece or a single lake, or just not a lot of topography to this place, because it was literally just a flat sod farm. Well, eventually, they bought this property and wanted to put a TPC golf course into the state of Minnesota. And look, I mean, they brought in Arnold Palmer, who, a lot of golf courses he's designed in his career. They did consultation with Tom Lehman as well, who's from Minnesota. And they wanted to just create a golf course that embodies the spirit of Minnesota, that truly just captures this stunning topography of this piece of property to make an excellent golf course. And they turned it into literally a Florida golf course. I don't think that was actually their intent, though. I think what actually they wanted to do was create a golf course that embodies the state, not motto or slogan, but it's the land of 10,000 lakes. That's what Minnesota is. And literally they set out to make a golf course that was a golf course of 10,000 lakes. Now, look, I understand that a lot of people like golf courses like this. They like watching. That's why people like PGA National, another golf course that, frankly, I don't really enjoy. I just don't personally enjoy golf courses where water is the only challenge. And other than that, as long as you just avoid the water, everything's kind of relatively fine. And that's really what happens at PGA National. And that's unfortunately what kind of happens here at TPC Twin Cities. The defining characteristic of this golf course is not greenside surrounds or shot making. It is just don't hit it in the water. And water comes into play, at least for the pros, 13 of 18 holes, either on the approach shot or off the tee. It's 15 of 18 in total, because there's people like me who's like a 12, 15, or the 15 handicap, who probably loses a dozen balls every time they play this place. I mean, I don't personally understand why somebody would want to play here if you're not a scratch or a single digit handicap. You're basically destined to lose a box of golf balls. Maybe you like buying new golf balls, and that's why you want to play here. I encourage you to recycle your inventory every single time. But yeah, like I don't particularly enjoy golf courses like this for a lot of different reasons. We'll go over some of the holes here. Here's an example right here. This is the second hole. This is the view from the tee box here. It's par 4, 450 yards. And honestly, just looking out, you have water all the way down the right here. You got a bunker, about like 290 to 300 to kind of catch balls that might drift a little too far right. But overall, just not it's a very straightforward hole. Don't hit it right, essentially. And if you don't, you got about 35 yards of fairway to navigate. That's it. That's the challenge. And then once you do that, you have another challenge of not hitting it in the water. The green is surrounded by water, all the right, short as well. So if you find yourself in the rough off the tee, you might see guys maybe lay up and have like 50 yards in for the third. You do have a little bit of challenging bunkers over here. That comes into play some of the stats in a little bit as far as what you generally want to look for. So there is some decent mounding to some of the areas around the green that I will concede is actually maybe a little interesting. But overall, though, again, the challenge of this hole, the objective is just don't hit it in the water. And then you do that over and over and over and over. Here's another example. This is actually one of their signature holes that they say on their website. The seventh hole. This is a short par 4, 380 yards. It has some interesting pieces to it to possibly make it interesting. So it could be risk reward if you want to take on the left here. If you want to maybe drive it over the water, drive it over this bunker here. This bunker actually kind of reminds me of the old bunker in front of 17 at Bay Hill. Maybe that's the Arnold Palmer connection where you have the bunker and it kind of bleeds into the lake here. And then you have basically the generous layup zone over to the right to set up a short little wedge into the green with a bunch of bunkers over on the right in case you really truly miss with the lesson driver. The problem is, though, from the professional tees, this is about 325 to carry all of this. And then there's only like a 20-yard wide fairway. Usually it's playing pretty soft. You can't even run it to the green if you want to maybe drive. If you got a helping wind. You have native grasses over to the left. You just don't really see a lot of guys maybe take on the left side to make it risk reward. You generally see a lot of guys just take a 3-wood or a 7-wood because it's easy to turn over, put it right in the middle of the fairway here and have like an 80-yard shot into the green. So a lot more bark on this hole than bite, unfortunately. Maybe if you moved up the tee box a couple days and you get a helping wind, maybe you see more guys maybe try and take on the more dangerous left side here. It looks pretty, but as far as what the pros do here, it's really homogenous. Everyone basically hits into the middle of the fairway over here, has a flip wedge in for a birdie. Now, this is actually one of the holes that I don't totally hate. It's actually one of the more ball busting ones on this hole. It's the 9th hole. And I think a couple rounds, especially when it plays into the wind here, it plays, between like 490, 500 yards, but into the wind, this one is pretty brutal. I think last year in either first round or second round, it was into the wind was into it, played to a scoring average 4.5, and a lot of reasons for it. Obviously, it's into the wind. It's a very long hole. If you miss the fairway, you're in some of this, 4-inch fescue or ryegrass over here. It's pretty difficult. A lot of guys just end up just kind of hacking out to the front of the green, trying to get up and down for 4. Even if you find the fairway, it's a long approach shot into the wind. You could end up putting your approach shot into the water here. There's some kind of challenging greenside surrounds. You got bunkers long. You got some mounds to the short left. You got some a little bit longer ryegrass and fescue around the bunkers here as well. So this is actually a pretty challenging hole. I mean, there's nothing really special about it, but it's a challenging hole. If you want to see maybe some guys make a mess of it, either on their last hole of the round if they start in 10 or in the middle of the round as well. This is the 17th hole. This is, again, another one of their signature holes. This is a par 3, 200 yards. It's over water. There's a bunker carved into a mound behind the green. Just truly revolutionary stuff right here. Again, the only objective is just don't hit it into the water. Okay. And then you got the 18th. In my opinion, maybe top 5 worst par 5 on the PGA Tour. It's not necessarily the hole's fault, but of just how they set it up for the tournament. There's something kind of glaring that makes it pretty bad. I mean, right off the jump, though, like if you're a 15 handicap, you're not looking at a lot of pathways to success in this hole. You have water right down the right on the fairway here. You have about a 35-yard wide fairway. But over on the left here, you have a side hill with some native grasses. You got the trees over here. It's just, there's nowhere to miss if you are a average to below average golfer here. You're probably either losing a ball or you're hitting into the junk. You don't really have a lot of hope here. But for a professional, it's just okay. 35-yard wide fairway, just don't hit it right. Sometimes you see them kind of bail out left a little bit. They'll have to punch up the fairway for their third. Not all that challenging besides just the penal water over on the right here. This is the layup zone. If in case somebody is actually in the rough off the tee, you're probably not going for the green, trying to carry it over water, except for, I forgot who did it. Somebody, I think, tried last year because they had to go for the win. And I think they were like 30 yards short of the water here. But otherwise, most guys, though, if you are out of position off the tee, you lay it up into this area right here, which is definitely no cakewalk, especially for an average golfer. This is about a 25-yard wide fairway right here with some bunkers. There's a side hill right here, like just not a very easy layup for an average golfer, especially one that maybe doesn't want to carry it over the water for their second shot. But for those who actually do, though, I mean, there are some kind of interesting greenside surrounds. You got a bunch of mounds. You got a few bunkers here. Definitely can make for an awkward chip if you are a little long over the green here. Obviously, you have to carry it over the water. There's some interesting things here. The problem, though, is that they put this giant grandstand over all of it. And you can't see any of the interesting greenside surrounds. It's just all covered by this giant 3M grandstand. And not only that, by the way, it's used as a backboard, as an aid for a lot of these golfers that, okay, look, like I'm going to try to carry the water. I'm just going to club up. And if I hit it over the green, so be it. I'll hit the grandstand. I'll get a free drop, get up and down, take my birdie, go for it. For just how it plays in the tournament for a professional, and also just how it's just so unfriendly for an average golfer, I don't like this hole at all. I understand why people do. People like watching guys hit in the water all day. To me, I kind of get tired of just seeing that result after a couple days. But look, people like their car crashes. It can be entertaining if it's really windy and you do like some calamity. I'm sure that now I am just all in on these round scores. We get a windy day, which unfortunately doesn't look like we're going to get this week. It looks like it's going to be pretty Royal Portrush weekend conditions at the golf course this week. But if you get a windy day and you like bend some round score overs, like this is definitely for you. I'm sure I probably would have a grand old time anti-sweating, guys in the Discord that week. But just overall, though, just as a viewer of this golf course, coming off the Open Championship, which to a lot of people, that kind of is the end of the golf year, unfortunately. Now we're going to start transitioning to NFL. But for anybody, true hardcore people, still like watching the PGA Tour every single week, I don't know. It just, this golf course just doesn't do it for me. I understand why it does for other people. I bet that Boston Capper would be on here saying this golf course is better than Royal Portrush because there's water. But just not for me. Okay. Let's get to the actual stats, the stuff you care about. You don't care about my opinion of this golf course. Let's get to the tournament fact sheet here. As I mentioned, designed by Arnold Palmer in 2000 with consultation from Tom Lehman. Got a renovation from Steve Wensloff in 2018. Now, that was a renovation to make it ready for the PGA Tour. This was a golf course, TPC Twin Cities, that hosted a lot of Champions Tour events for a few years. But they obviously had to toughen it up a little bit for the PGA Tour. It had relatively wider fairways for the renovation. They shrunk those in. They pushed the bunkers out. And Steve Wensloff he just works for the PGA Tour. He works for their course management division. So essentially the PGA Tour renovated this golf course to make it suitable for the 3M Open when it came here. Some weather notes, because I'm sure you guys just want to hear me talk about the weather again, after I spent a lot of time on that, grinding over that during the Open Championship. They've gotten a fair share of moisture and rainfall leading up to this tournament. May was very hot and humid, that they note in the course facts here. June brought an unusual amount of rain, 7+ inches, and forced some weather delays for anybody who played there. They've had a little bit of kind of a tougher time getting this golf course ready for play because of all the rainstorms. That's going to do a couple things. Number one, golf course is going to play soft. When you get that much rain, and in that short amount of time, maybe if you have a couple weeks of sun and wind that can dry it out, but it looks like, looking at the weather forecast, they're going to get some rain before the tournament here. Probably going to be pretty soft golf course, which we've seen that recently, and what happens when they get kind of soft, benign conditions. We'll show that leaderboard a little bit. I would not probably expect as many car crashes as you may have hoped coming in this week. But hey, who knows? Maybe the weather can change. Weather forecasts weren't all that great over in the UK. Maybe they won't be all that great this week at the 3M Open. Some agronomy or some yardage notes. It's a par 71, 7,431 yards. Some agronomy notes as well. You have bent grass, fairways, and greens cut to 0.1 inches. So that's going to run about 12 on the snip meter. It's about PGA Tour average. I mean, this is a TPC golf course. It's going to be basically the average golf course that they play every single year. The rough is a mix of bluegrass and fescue grown to 4 inches. Now, I said something about the rain and all the rain they got. Well, one reason that maybe we'll unpack on Tuesday is why maybe the rough wasn't quite as difficult as what we thought it was going to be at Royal Portrush, is because it wasn't as wet. And that rough over there, when it's more wispy, it's definitely more manageable. Well, if we've gotten a lot of rain at TPC Twin Cities, might be a little more thicker and healthier this year. So maybe they'll pose a little bit more of a challenge than it has in some other years. Overall, though, the rough doesn't really have as big of a penalty. It's not necessarily because it's challenging to play out of. It's for another reason that we'll get to in a little bit. But it is 4-inch bluegrass and fescue rough. Average green size, 6,500 square feet, relatively larger, a little bit larger than PGA Tour average. Average fairway width, 35.6 yards. Pretty generous corridors. It's just, if you miss big, you're going to put a big number on the scorecard, most likely. All right, let's get to some stats. And despite all of the water on the golf course off the tee, it only is about, as far as difficulty, about PGA Tour average. And I think the second hole kind of showed you why it would be, it's kind of offsetting factors why it would be PGA Tour average. Well, you got the water that is definitely posing a challenge all the way down the right there. Otherwise, though, pretty straightforward. There's no other real trouble. You could bail out left. There's plenty of room. There's a bunker there that, that can pose some problems, but that's really the only adversity. Basically, just all you do is just avoid the right side. You're totally fine. And a lot of holes at TPC Twin Cities are basically like that. Just avoid the water. Everything else is kind of normal. And that's why the average difficulty every single year is about PGA Tour average. It's 21 out of 38 in 2022, 25th out of 45 courses in 2023, 21 out of 43 in 2024. Now, approach play, this is actually where I've added the average scoring every single year below this. This is actually kind of correlated with how course conditions have dictated how easy or difficult the approach play is. Now, back in 2022, it was actually one of the more tougher golf courses to hit approaches from, 12th hardest out of 38 courses. And you can see the scoring average in 2022, other than round 3, which got to minus 2.4, which for anybody who thinks if you just add a bunch of water at a golf course, it automatically makes it hard. High round 3 in 2022. These guys went super low. But otherwise, there was actually a fair amount of wind in round 1 and round 4. We'll get to that leaderboard in a little bit. Scott Piercy absolutely melted in the wind in round 4. But it played, almost a stroke over par round 4, about almost 2 strokes over par in round 1. And that's why you see some of the difficulty in the approach play kind of show up to match the scoring conditions. Basically, just the windier it is, essentially the harder the approach shots are because there is more water around each green. Now, in 2023, where these guys basically just lit the place up, it was one of the easiest to hit approach shots on the PGA Tour, 40th out of 45. Lee Hodges won at 24 under. The average score that year was minus 1.3. And again, kind of like what you see at PGA National, what makes PGA Tour National actually difficult and why you actually like that course is more when it gets windy and firm. That's what makes the approach shots more difficult. When it plays softer and no wind, more benign, like the last couple of years where everybody has complained about it because the weather hasn't really cooperated, not necessarily the golf courses change all that much. It's played relatively easier with the approach shots. And you can see that in 2023 when it was relatively benign. Every single round played under par. Very easy approach shots because, again, the only objective with these approach shots is just don't hit it in the water. There's not really a whole lot of other adversity to basically account for with your iron shots. And then last year, when it was a little bit of a mixed bag, I mean, it played relatively easy in round over the weekend. First couple rounds, kind of difficult, especially round 2. It got a little bit of wind. A little bit more difficulty as far as the approach shots. Only average score about minus 0.77. So you can kind of see like the easier scoring conditions are expected. Probably the easier approach shots are going to be. The harder the conditions are, the tougher the approach shots are going to be. Basically with the weather, obviously this is subject to change, but it seems like a lot of the bad weather is around the tournament. But once you get to the tournament, it's like 5 to 10 mile per hour winds every single day. So I would probably say if you're going to build a model on BetSperts, probably you want to toggle easy approach shot conditions instead of average or difficult. Obviously, if the weather changes, you may want to pivot to more difficult iron shot conditions. Around the green, just not a ton of adversity here. I showed you a couple of pictures of those when you saw the bunkers. That's really the only tough areas around the green at TPC Twin Cities. Otherwise, though, the difficulty of getting up and down from the fairway or the rough, relatively easy PGA Tour standards. It's just the bunkers, though, which are kind of a little bit oddly shaped. They're in some mounds, so it's a little bit more awkward and less straightforward to get up and down of a bunker. Yeah, TPC Twin Cities and maybe some other venues, that's where some of the difficulty is. And that's really fueling like any difficulty. Otherwise, though, it's about average difficulty on the PGA Tour. And putting, very easy to putt at TPC Twin Cities. A lot of these greens just don't have a lot of undulation. They're big. I know that putting over 15 feet at TPC Twin Cities is one of the easiest on the entire PGA Tour calendar. You can pour in a lot of putts at this place. So that's categorically where it's tough. It's the approach play kind of is dictated based on how the weather is, if it's difficult or not. Off the tee, the objectives just don't hit the water. Very easy to putt at TPC Twin Cities. Those are basically the big takeaways at this golf course. And again, I guess we'll just talk about the missed fairway penalty and the driving stats. Obviously, because of the abundance of water off the tee, it's going to have a higher missed fairway penalty. It's not really to do with the rough. As far as the penalty, even though it is 4-inch rough, the reason why there's a lack of penalty there is because there's a lot of water around some of the greens where, you can hit it into the water if you're in the fairway too, or if you're in the rough. So that kind of shrinks the gap here as far as like your missed fairway your penalty for hitting in the rough, because guys can just screw up in the middle of the fairway and hit in the water just like anybody from the rough as well. It's your non-rough penalty. That's where you really see the separator there. This would be, obviously hitting in the water. You see it in the penalty percentage, one of the highest in the PGA Tour. That's basically, again, that's the objective. Just don't hit it in the water. As far as driving stats go, it's, you would think TPC Twin Cities is pretty driver heavy. There are a couple of holes where guys do club down because either the fairway bottlenecks or it just doesn't make sense to push driver up there because of the danger. Obviously, there are a lot of holes where you can pull driver. But I know, for example, like number 7 I showed you, that's less than driver. Number 14 is less than driver. The short par 4 on the back, that's like 360. A lot of guys just pull 3-wood because you can kind of bounce it to the front of the green and then just chip up and get up and down for birdie. There's trouble all the way down the right, so why pull driver if you can kind of get close to the 3-wood? But the average fairway accuracy rate, relatively high, about 63%, 62%. About average, a little bit higher than average in PGA Tour. So again, like relatively just straightforward fairways to hit. I mean, it's not the easiest to hit the fairways there, but it's pretty generous overall. Just don't hit it in the water. That's the challenge at this place. And you'll hear that all over and over all week. As far as proximity buckets go, You got a higher concentration of shorter approach shots under 125 yards, makes up about 20% of your shots overall for the round. You have less than average from like 125 to 175, but still makes up approximately like 27 to like 30% of your shots. So don't ignore it completely. It just is a little less emphasized in other PGA Tour venues. It's your shots over 175. That's where the higher concentrations you've seen, especially between 175 and 225. That makes it about like 34 to like 32 to 34% of your shots between 175 and 225, about 50% of your shots over 225. So it's kind of a little bit all over the place. It's not very easy kind of match your buckets when you're building a model as far as like what you actually want, because it's a little bit of this, it's a little bit of that. I generally kind of prefer like a nice consecutive range where it's a high concentration across a couple buckets and then maybe a little bit lower towards long play or short play. It makes it a little easier, I feel like, kind of narrow down like specifically what iron guys you want. This one where it's a good mix of long iron play and short iron, like it's a little harder to kind of pin down exactly the type of iron player you want this place. So this is not really my favorite split as far as proximity buckets go for handicapping this tournament. Now, as far as comp courses go, let's first focus on maybe the predictive skill set chart from Data Golf here. Obviously, with the amount of trouble that you have off the fairway in the form of water, it would be more predictive to success if a guy was relatively accurate off the tee. Those guys generally have to have more success here than other players. And you see that in the chart here. Driving distance definitely is a lower correlation of success. Obviously, it's not necessarily that like length hurts you here. It's just that when you look at the tops of leaderboards, it can be a little bit more of a mixed bag. That's why there's a lower correlation than other PGA Tour golf courses. Iron play is about PGA Tour average. That is still the most important skill set you'll have at this place. You got to hit good iron shots. Putting is a little less than predictive than other golf courses, mainly I think because the putt surfaces are so easy and flat. So, that probably do value some skill potentially at this venue. And then if you look at some of the comp courses, most of this list is courses that have a very high missed fairway penalty, like Concession, Innisbrook, Albany, Sea Island, TPC Southwind, Royal Troon, El Cardinal, TPC Deer Run, Muirfield Village, East Lake. Although I don't know if East Lake necessarily is a high missed fairway penalty anymore after the renovation. We'll have to revisit that topic in a couple weeks. Sedgefield, Summit Club, where essentially if you just hit it into the fairway, it's in the rocks and you're dead. Those are courses that tend to feature or have similar predictive skill set charts to this place is those courses. One course you don't see here is PGA National. I think the reason why is that there actually is not a big missed fairway penalty at PGA National because most of the trouble is actually around the green, not necessarily in the form of water off the tee. But you definitely do see guys who do well at PGA National and do well here because it's just don't hit it in the water. It's kind of that mentality that you have to have when you play these places. And there's a reason why when we look at some of these leaderboards, guys are really good at courses with just a lot of water on it, like that one, are good at this place as well. Another one that you can think of too that I've used in the past, basically because of Alex Noren, essentially, Le Golf National. That's another one if you want to use some, like, compare for some DP World Tour guys. Again, like just a golf course where the objective is kind of just don't hit it in the water. And you tend to see some guys who play that golf course relatively well if they were on the DP World Tour for a little bit, come over and play TPC Twin Cities pretty well too. All right, let's go over some past leaderboards here. Last year, a leaderboard that I definitely remember fondly. I had Johnny Vegas, Boston Capper had Johnny Vegas. We both hit the outright in the same week. We were definitely sweating this one though, because Johnny Vegas, ever reliable, got on. He was tied, I think, with Grazerman heading into 18, and he needed to birdie the par 5. I mean, par 5, you expect the birdie. So Vegas gets on in 2, or maybe he didn't. Regardless, he needed to 2-putt from like 90 feet to win. And like Capper and I, we were both texting each other. We're like, I can't even watch this thing. So I ended up turning around. I couldn't bear to watch the TV, seeing Johnny Vegas have to hit a 90-foot putt. Somehow Vegas ends up putting it to like 3 feet. It was a fantastic lag putt. Ends up draining the putt. We win. Probably a big community win too. Andy has mentioned he was on Vegas last year, so I'm sure a lot of you all were on Johnny Vegas too. A lot of our fans, our show was on Johnny Vegas. It was a great win. It was very satisfying to get a Vegas win. But you can kind of see here, like, we talk about the skill set chart, mostly just accurate guys do well here. Well, Johnny Vegas, big bomber, like that doesn't fit. I get my point is, you'll see in some of these leaderboards is that obviously, like, guys who hit a lot of fairways, like, will do well here. That's no secret. But there's a couple caveats. One, the ability to hit fairways every single day is not very predictive. If you just have a bad driving day, then you're going to get punished. It kind of comes and goes like putting does. Distance, though, is predictive because you're going to always hit it far. It's not going to vary from day to day. And you get some of these guys who just have, or like a lot of length, and they just have great driving weeks, like Johnny Vegas did, averaged 302 out the box and hit 71% of his fairways. Or Taylor Pendrith did, averaged 300 off the box, hit 63% of his fairways. Or Patrick Fishburne, hit it long and straight. JJ Spawn, even, that's when he was kind of gaining pop as well. He would hit it long and straight. You get some of those guys who just have great driving weeks, even if they might not be the most accurate guy in general, they're going to do well here. And that's one of the reasons why Johnny Vegas won. As far as in tournament goes, the ability to hit it well off the tee separated you. I mean, no surprise. You had to drive well, especially it was a little bit worse weather conditions last year, maybe some other TPC Twin City events. But you see here, as far as like how strokes getting off the team is made up, it was made up almost entirely by how many fairways you hit in the tournament, and definitely not by distance. Because that's more important in tournament, is basically just don't hit it into the trouble. Sure, you can hit 325 into the water and it'll register as hitting a 325-yard drive, but you'll get a penalty stroke. That doesn't really help you there. So as far as the other categories go, I mean, iron play is about PGA Tour average as far as like how you separate yourself in tournament. It's the most important stat. Putting is a little bit right behind there. In tournament putting and iron play is always more important than driving, in tournament driving and around the green play. And around the green play was definitely devalued in this one. We get to the next year, though, in more benign conditions, easier conditions. And this one, maybe this is what we maybe want to look for as far as like how the leaderboard shakes out. If we get really benign conditions, is basically it made hitting fairways, for the most part, pretty easy for a lot of shorter guys. A lot of short hitters did very well in this tournament. I mean, Lee Hodges definitely does not hit it out there all that far. Martin Lair, JT Poston, T2, Kevin Streelman, T2. The only real bombers on this leaderboard were probably Mitchell and Finau, Cam Davis, and Sam Stevens. Otherwise, though, Adam Baddeley, Dylan Wu, Sam Ryder, Emiliano Grillo, a lot of pipsqueaks on this leaderboard that tend to hit a lot of fairways. And off the tee play, when conditions I think were relatively benign and easy, not as important to separate yourself, because I think probably everybody drove it pretty well that week. So it just was harder to separate yourself. Really just turned into a iron and putting contest, essentially. You can see here, like Lee Hodges gained 2.4 strokes per round with his approaches. JT Poston had a great iron week. Sam Ryder, Kevin Streelman. There were a couple guys that lost strokes with their approach play, but they putt pretty well. They hit a lot of fairways. They kind of made it up by just not getting in trouble. But Lee Hodges ran away with this tournament at 24 under. Not one of the best tournaments we've ever seen, unfortunately. And then 2022, Tony Finau wins a 17 under. This is when Tony Finau started to kind of just say, hey, like, is actually Tony kind of a good, like a prolific winner at this point? He ends up winning this week, ends up winning the following week at Rocket Mortgage, ends up winning again at Houston in the fall. But the true story of this tournament was actually Scott Piercy, who I think he had like a 4-stroke lead on the front nine and then made an absolute mess of, I want to say, hole number 6 or 5, where he hit it in the bunker off the tee and he didn't have a great lie, and then he tried to go for the green and just hit it right in the water there. Ends up getting a double, ends up melting, I think, a couple other holes too. Scott Piercy definitely gagged this one for sure. But this was tougher scoring conditions than the 2023 edition, and you see a similar within events correlation chart as you did for 2024. You see a bigger emphasis in separating yourself on the leaderboard as far as how you drove it with approach play and necessarily distance, like a big skew as well. About average with iron play and putting, and a big de-emphasis around the green. So basically, kind of what I'm coming to with these leaderboards is that in harder conditions where it's harder to drive it and control the ball a little bit more off the tee, obviously better driving weeks help you, and you can separate yourself a lot more. But when it's more benign conditions and easier driving conditions, basically everybody's hitting a lot of fairways, and you don't have to worry about the wind catching it and hitting in the water. In tournament off the tee play, it's harder to separate. So maybe that's a little more devalued this week if we don't get some weather conditions. Obviously, the objective is still true. You still have to drive it relatively good. You got to avoid the water and hit a lot of fairways. But I think that's going to expand the pool of guys who would actually hit it well in the week. So just something maybe to keep in mind that maybe the 2023 leaderboard, this one might be a little more of what happens. As far as like how like the scoring goes, not necessarily the players, but how the scoring goes it's just harder because everybody's kind of driving it well. So you're not getting a lot of strokes. It just kind of turns into just an iron and putting contest essentially. So, all right. So that's the end of that. Let's go to the odds board now. And again, I have not looked at the odds. Here we go. Sam Burns 15-1. I get it. He's been playing great. He's been driving it better lately. He's not just a fire hose. He has good history here. But 15-1 for Sam Burns. And I don't really feel like giving my co-host a heart attack on Tuesday by saying I'm betting Sam Burns after I bet him 80-1 at the Open. Not one of my finest bets. Guys, it was a rough week. I had a very bad week. Let's forgive me with some of my pre-tournament bets I made a day after my heart got ripped out. We'll pass probably on Sam Burns. 16-1, Chris Gotterup, apparently the best player on earth. Well, actually, no, I take that back. He's probably the third best player on earth at this point, behind Scotty Scheffler, and maybe Rory, I guess. But he's 16-1, having nearly 19-1. Wyndham Clark, man, talk about faking it this week. I understand he played great, but the true Wyndham Clark came out on Thursday when it was really bad conditions, and he put up a 76. Thank you for cashing the round score over. And then as soon as conditions got a lot better and there was no more wind, look at all the ball speed imposters that started to do very well at the Open Championship, including Wyndham Clark, I'm not saying he's a ball speed imposter, but I don't think it's a coincidence that Bryson did extremely well from Friday to Sunday, and then vomited all over himself on Thursday after saying that he wanted to test in a wind tunnel to try and get better at the Open. Maybe that was an indication that he wasn't going to be very comfortable on Thursday. I don't know. Something to think about. But regardless, Wyndham Clark is 25-1. Taylor Pendrith 25-1. Grayson 25-1. Tony Finau 35-1. That's interesting. He played okay this week. I mean, he faded badly today. He crossed a lot of people. But I don't know. That's interesting, I guess. I don't know. We'll see about that. Sung Jae 35-1. No, thank you. I'm good on him. Siwoo, Ricky Fowler, Michael Torbjornsen, who's been playing good recently. I mean, we do have history of a really good driver and Matthew Wolff getting his first win here. 35-1, though. That's pretty steep. Kirk Kitayama 35-1. Oh, man. I'm going to try not to talk myself into him this week. Maybe the fact he's under 40-1, maybe that'll help me. Jake Knapp 40-1, Grillo 40. Yeah, you're right. You guys are right. These odds are disgusting. Adam Scott 40. What is he even doing here? Why does he want to play the 3M? He's going to withdraw. There's no chance Adam Scott stays in this field. Keith Mitchell, obligatory 40-1. Good here. Good at PGA National. Good drivers. Long and straight. He can definitely do the Vegas routine. 40-1. Scam Champ playing well. 45-1. Lucan. Yeah, I'm not inspired by a lot of these guys. Okay, fine. Kevin Yu. Here's the first one. 50-1. Playing great. Putter's starting to come alive. That'll be a bet. It's probably going to be very tipped. I don't really care. I'm looking at 51 Kevin Yu. Fine. Let's do it. We can do that. Got Alex Smalley. Ugh. Yes, for Svensson. That's interesting. 55 is kind of gross, but I know he played pretty well at PGA National. Maybe that can work out for you. Maybe he can be kind of the Johnny Vegas routine here. 61 Sam Stevens. Good driver. That can help you here. That could be a bet for me this week. You got, oh man. What happened to Steven Yeager? He would absolutely be somebody I probably would want to target if he wasn't a complete knucklehead right now. That's probably a no. Eric Van Rooyen, we've joked about him. I think this is the genesis of if there's water, don't play EVR. He was mega chalk, I think, like in 2021 or something. And it was because he was, played this golf course a lot, went to University of Minnesota, and he was terrible. I think he actually has been relatively bad at this golf course a lot. So maybe that isn't a good thing. Doug Ginn, sure. Why not? Ben On and Gary Woodland and Bo Hostler and Austin Eckroat. I could probably spin myself into him. Won a PGA National. Good driver. Terrible around the green, but that's a little de-emphasized here a bit. Might not be horrible. Victor Perez. Hey, decently golf national. Got to be good here, right? All right, I'm kind of running out of steam here. So, all right. Obviously, we have a lot to unpack for the Tuesday show. Yes, Josh, talk about Kevin Yu. Definitely like Kevin Yu this week. That probably is going to be probably one of the bets I make for sure. So, all right, that's it. Thank you very much. Again, thank you for watching tonight without Boston Capper. Also, thank you for taking advantage of the ISN free trial. If you did, I hope you stick around. Also, thanks for all the people who left me messages this week after what I said last week. It's been a rough week. Obviously losing a dog is terrible, but it was nice to hear people relate and send some nice wishes. I really appreciate it. And that's one of the perks about the Discord is that, we tilt golfers, we'll wish horrible things about them, but it's a great community. We all rally around each other. And thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. So with that, thank you for watching. I'll be back with Boston Capper on Tuesday to unpack some thoughts about the Open 2025 major season. Maybe start a big argument with him. And then we will get to the odds board for the 3M. So thank you. Appreciate it. Have a good night, everybody.